these high-end finishes. It looks like the
So
inside
it
of
looks
like
fantastic, even though it's small.
is
Hi, go ahead.
Even though Steven's gonna be here.
I don't know, I think he's starting the live stream though.
Okay. Okay, good afternoon. Welcome to the Apex Planning Board meeting. Today is October 13th. I'd like to start off with any type of new items from staff this afternoon rather.
Do you want to do the invocation and pledge first?
We can do that, yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
Bow your head, please. Dear God, as we gather here today, we humbly seek your guidance and wisdom. Grant us the clarity of thought and understanding as we embark on this meeting. Help us to make decisions that align with your will and bring about positive outcomes. These things we ask in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, good afternoon.
Afternoon.
So our first item of information today, I wanted to remind you all that the public forum #1 for Peak Plan 2055 will be next week, Wednesday, October 22nd and Thursday, October 23rd, from 4:30 to 6:30 p.m. They're the same program each night, but on the 22nd, we'll be at Hope Community Church at 2080 East William Street. And on Thursday, we'll be here in Town Hall up on the 3rd floor. So then I'll turn it over to Katie.
And good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the board. I just wanted to provide you a notification that I'll be bringing forward a presentation to Town Council on October 28th, so that the next meeting, not tomorrow, about a similar item to what I'll be presenting for the public hearing tonight. It has to do with proposed changes to the Apex Transit Plan map for regional routes, for which the Town Council doesn't have authority to change the service of. So we're breaking these changes. You'll see some of them tonight. And then the ones that are not subject to a public hearing essentially will be a presentation to Town Council. And there's 4 different routes that this will include. So it includes Go Triangle Route 311, Go Triangle Route 305, the Go Cary ACX, and the Go Cary Route 9. And we have a similar set of illustrations as what we would present in a public hearing, but these are not subject to a public hearing, essentially. So these are the regional routes. You can see the purple bubbles to Go Triangle Route 305. We're updating to reflect their actual service they're providing today along US 64 and Lake Pine Drive and Shepherd's Vineyard Drive. We had previously made an adjustment based on a routing they were trying out, and they've gone back to their old routing. So now we're putting their new routing as future routing because they want to come back to it one day, but they realized they weren't ready because of traffic issues. And then just cleaning up a little line down at South Hughes Street, south of the Peakway, where they no longer operate. And then for the Route 311, that route is currently suspended, but is programmed to come back in FY27 with a slightly different routing. So we're updating that routing to reflect their plans. For Go Cary, they're actually planning to discontinue the ACX, which is the Apex Cary Express, and start the new Route 9, which is an all-day service on November 1st. So we're replacing the ACX with the Route 9 on this map. And that's kind of a summary, but I'll be presenting those to council for information and for transparency essentially with the transit plan map changes. So that's that item of information, and I'm happy to answer questions if you have one.
Thank you. Now, does that come before this board at all for anything other than just notification that it's going to council?
Correct. It's not coming before you all. We realize we can't really have a public hearing on an item which we don't have control over.
Sure.
So now the decision was just to present it to council for information.
Got it, okay.
So, thanks.
Very good, thank you. Okay. All right, we're gonna open up, this time, I think we're good for, we don't have any other items of information, we're good?
That should be it. Thank
Okay.
you.
Go ahead and open up the public comment. Public comment portion of this meeting is to speak on items that do not appear on this agenda. Being that we really don't have anybody in the audience, I'm assuming unless somebody has signed up, does anybody like to make public comment on anything? Nope. Okay, I'll go ahead and close then the public comment. I'd like to open up the consent items. Item number 1, for public hearings. This is for Katie Schwing. We're gonna have the senior, the public hearing and possible motion regarding the amendments to the Apex Transportation map.
You need to do the consent for the last month's minutes.
I apologize. I'm all out of sorts today.
I'll help you. I'll make a motion to approve the September 8th, 2025 minutes.
Thank
I'll
you.
second.
Thank you. Skipped right over that one. Thanks, guys. All right, do we have, all approved, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. Okay, now we'll move on to the item number 1, Katie Schwing.
Good evening again. So I'll be presenting for public hearing 1, which is proposed changes to the Apex Transit Plan map. And the amendments before you tonight are all related to proposed updates to the transit plan map based on the recommendations from the Apex Transit Prioritization Study, which you may be aware was presented to you all last month and was accepted by Town Council on September 23rd. This map on this slide right here is not the transit plan map. This is rather an illustration of the proposed recommendations from the study to kind of illustrate what the basis was for the amendments that we're bringing forward. And I just wanted to note that the lines are still considered conceptual in nature. They're not finalized service plans yet, so they are still subject to a potential further amendment to the transit plan map later. So I also wanted to point out that in the slides I'll be presenting, I'm going to use a slightly clarified map showing the changes, which is a little bit different from what was in the public hearing announcement. Staff, it doesn't change the intent or the changes presented, but we realized there was a little more clarity and thoroughness to help illustrate the changes better. There were some layers that were under other layers that you couldn't really see, and we added some more labels and things like that. So I'll point out where there's any additional information that wasn't in the public notice map. And I'm gonna zoom in really close on the individual changes just to go through them, because I realize on the full size map it can be hard to see what each of the individual changes are. So I'll go by the recommendations in the Apex Transit Prioritization Study to kind of illustrate what those changes on the map will be. So the recommendation in number 2 from the fixed route service recommendations was to revise the existing Go Apex Route 1 routing. And you can see that illustrated here with the green and white dashed lines. And there's arrows pointing to the different areas that are included here. So up towards downtown, there's addition of that green and white striped line coming up Hughes Street from East William Street, going over to Chatham and up to North Mason Street. So that's a new addition. And I'll try to use the mouse here, that might help. So it's this area. And then further south, we've got the additional lines along Perry Road and South Hughes Street. And then a little extra area down at Broadstone Way and basically turning around in the Walmart parking lot. So that's at the bottom. And also associated with this change is actually a small proposed removal of existing Go Apex Run service, which is along East Williams and the Peakway. So essentially, if we were to change the routing, we'd have to stop serving that segment and serve the new segment. Okay, we also have a few other changes north of downtown. And so we've proposed to remove routing basically from Laura Duncan Road along the Peakway, Salem Street, and Hunter Street. And that would remove Go Apex Route 1 as well as the future local routing, which is the white and blue striped line. And then we would also propose to remove the little turnaround at Olive Chapel Professional Park, which is along Chapel Ridge Road. And the green and white striped line that you see on Chapel Ridge Road at the bottom picture was a change that was actually made previously with a different public hearing, but we realized we're not going to serve the turnaround if we serve the larger loop so we don't need to turn around on private property anymore, essentially, if we're going to loop through Olive Chapel Ridge Road and not Olive Chapel Professional Park. Sorry, there's a lot of nitpicky little changes here. Okay, so we'll move on to the next recommendation, which was to implement a new fixed route following the Pine Plaza Pleasant Park routing concept from the study. And we've created a new feature called Future Go Apex Route 2, which is a yellow and white striped line. And this is kind of the northern part of it, where you can see it going up Laura Duncan Road to Pine Plaza Drive to Old Raleigh Road, going up Shepherd's Vineyard just to turn around in the Eva Perry Library parking lot and back down towards downtown. We're also removing some future local route, which is a blue and white line along 64. That makes a little triangle from Old Raleigh Road to Shepherd's Vineyard back to 64, because that's essentially being replaced by the Route 2 concept. And then south of downtown, we've got this future Route 2 yellow and white striped line going down South Salem Street all the way down to Pleasant Plains Road, turning around in the Pleasant Park entrance loop, back up to Kelly Road, to Apex Barbecue Road, and back up to downtown. And the clarified map, you couldn't tell that it goes through downtown, but in this version you can see the striped routing through downtown. Okay, and we have another recommendation, which is to implement a new fixed route to serve the Veridia East Village area. So again, we've created a new designation called Future Go Apex Route 3, which we're denoting with a teal and white striped line, and that's replacing just regular future local route lines all the way from downtown along East William Street to Veridia East Village. And we didn't label these roads in the public notice map, but we realized we need to because they're actually not there yet. So people might not know exactly what road we were talking about, but it's, let's see, Future Atlas Lane, Adesso Boulevard, Jesse Drive, Forest Light Way, and Veridia East Village Street C, which has not been named yet. And I think, oh yeah, and there's a piece of future local route that continues across Jesse Drive. We didn't want to lose that because there could be a potential future route that travels the length of Jesse Drive. And then the last recommendation is actually to remove the proposed bus transit center near East William Street at Hughes Street and Mason Street. And that recommendation is actually to consolidate that potential future bus transit center with the bus and rail transfer center, which is just to the west of it with the blue circle. And that's really to kind of focus the planning towards the location which was identified with the S-Line Mobility Hub study, which proposed kind of a dual use for that location as a bus transfer center and eventually a passenger rail station. So rather than having two blocks away from each other, we're just planning to consolidate them into one location now that we have a location identified. And because there's so many little changes, I wanted to do a quick before and after preview for you about what this would actually look like on the transit plan map. So here's kind of a zoom in on the most recently adopted version, which is as of August. And this is what it would look like in the after condition if all the changes are approved with the new routing designations shown. And one thing I did want to point out is the areas where we had proposed to remove existing Go Apex Route 1 service were denoting with a black and green line, and it says existing Go Apex Route 1 proposed to be removed. So essentially the lines are still on the map, but they're designated as proposed to be removed because, like I said before, these recommendations are still conceptual in nature. It's going to take us time to finalize any service changes, and we want to make sure that people are aware of the potential change and that we will have additional opportunity for public input before we actually remove any routing from the street. I'm happy to toggle back and forth if anyone needs it, but otherwise I'm just letting you know that the recommendation from staff is for the planning board to recommend town council approve the proposed amendments to the transit plan map. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Katie, appreciate it. I had one question. Some of the items were listed as to, the reasons, or no pun intended, the drive behind the changes were actually, new construction areas and some other things that, just something new that came up. Were any of these changes made by, just count of people and where they're being picked up, or is it actual use, or was this all kind of like what we perceive things are going to go, where things are going to go, or?
Yeah, so just for context, I'll put the map back up. But yeah, so these all came out of recommendations from the Apex Transit Prioritization Study, which had a lot of influencing factors on where those conceptual lines were drawn. So it was a combination of the public feedback we received, a combination of GIS data where we actually looked at where the population and jobs were, where it could be feasible to operate, and a host of things like that. So they kind of all got distilled into these final recommendations.
Perfect, sounds great.
Katie, I've got a question. Great presentation, by the way. And it may be more of an operational question, one for transit as opposed to planning. But just curious, and this may already be something that you can do as a writer. I just recalled this was a question or an issue in a similar small scale fixed route system that I'm familiar with, and can riders transfer out in the system where routes come together? So, for example, when you were talking about the changes to proposed Route 1 or add future Go Apex 1, and then the teal Go Apex 3, for example, there along East Williams, where those two and then possibly even the third local route come together. Can you transfer out in the system, or can you only transfer at the transfer site?
Yeah, great question. And so there's kind of two pieces to that. There's the physical proximity of the routes, and then there's also like any fare or other structure that might prevent somebody from transferring. So we're very fortunate that the Go Apex service is a free service. It doesn't require any card or any sort of payment to ride it, so anyone can hop on or off at any bus stop. So you do have to board at bus stops, but if there's a place where the two routes intersect anywhere in the system, people are free to transfer between those. We don't only have the one route right now, but in the future, folks would be able to transfer. We also have the two regional routes that serve Apex that I that are not the subject of this public hearing, but from data we received last year, we do know that people are transferring to those services as well, but they're from different agencies.
Sure. Okay. Well, that's great to hear. And so are they at those, and yes, that should be expected, that one cannot jump on or off the bus at a nonstop. So at those designated stops, are they signed as such so that people know I can transfer out in the system? I don't have to just transfer at the transfer location.
So where we do share stops, and there aren't too many of them right now, but where we do share stops with Go Carry or Go Triangle, we just basically each have our own sign on the post. So there's two different signs. So right now there's no language about transferring, but there's the assumption that they can board either bus that they decide.
Okay. I feel like, so I think I've seen that kind of signage at the Harris Teeter on 64, where the Raleigh Express, and I might be calling it the wrong name,
Go
it
Triangle.
stops there for an extended period of time, but there seems to be other signs there. So just other independent standalone signs that might stop at that same location. Is that right?
Right, and I can't remember what that signage might say. It might have something to do with, can't remember now, but they might occasionally have additional instructions on them if there's something weird about them. Like I know that same stop serves both northbound and southbound trips of that route, so there might be clarification on make sure you're boarding the one that's going in the right direction.
Yeah. Okay, great. All right, fantastic. Thank you so much.
Excuse me. If I could make a suggestion, so to speak, when the bus goes to Pleasant Park, rather than turning around in that short roundabout that's at the entrance to Pleasant Park, that it go through to the playground, up around the splash pad to the parking lot, because if you're asking people to ride it and they're active in playground, soccer, anything that goes on, it's 4/10 of a mile from, and I measured it this weekend, it's 4/10 of a mile from that drop off to the playground. So it becomes an inhibitor, so to speak, where there's a clear flow through of the traffic that can exit them back out and have a stop, I'll say at the intersection where the snack bar building is, to be able to let people offload and get on the bus at that point in time.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion, and we did preliminary look at that as part of the study. Our only concern at this point is the amount of time that's available on the routing to make sure we stay within a 1 hour trip time for the route, which is what it's kind of planned to be, to make sure that the complete trips can be completed once per hour. And I think it only added like 2 minutes or something like that to do that loop, but we were concerned that we were kind of reaching the top of our time limit. Certainly as we finalize the service planning for these routes in the future, we will look at that, and if we can, we will. But we're just not sure quite yet how the timing will shake out.
Yeah, I think that you'd see increased ridership if they can drop them off at the point of their intended travel time versus having them walk with. I can go back, my children are much older now, but I can envision a parent with a child that gets off the bus but then has to walk 4/10 of a mile just to get to the playground. So I think that we'd see increased ridership if we can offer that. So
yeah, I would like to, and I hope we can. So we'll keep looking at that area. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
So Jeff, I understand you're making a motion to increase the speed limit along Old US 1 to shorten the time.
Well, it would, but that's, I think up to that point it's already like 45 or 55, and I've seen enough accidents, so I would not want to do that. But
just for buses only.
But when we have a secondary access to Pleasant Park, then that should accelerate that. So
makes sense. It's a great suggestion. I think it can work. I think that'd be great.
Yes. So.
Well, as Salem has widened, that has happened on its own.
Oh, yeah. Very good.
That's a great point. Yeah.
Any other questions, comments?
That's exciting, by the way, that it's free. Is that now? I'm many systems. Well, for example, that express to Raleigh and back was free. It may still be when they were using out COVID funds. But it sounds like you're saying that's a permanent fund that remains free. That's not a leftover from, correct?
Right, so Go Triangle did recently return back to having fairs. So they were fare free for a while, like you said, during COVID, for several reasons, and have recently returned to having the fairs. The Go Apex service is envisioned as a fare free service, and we, not to go too much of a tangent, but we do receive some funding support from the Wake Transit program. So we apply for a matching grant.
Okay.
Which helps to keep it fare free.
No, I mean, that's outstanding. It really, and again, based on just scale, the size of a fixed route system, this size, that's just really outstanding. Really is.
Yeah, and sorry, one more comment on that. So we do have a lot of young people and a lot of older people who ride as well. So that we see that as an advantage for, in particular, those riders. But it just removes barriers for anyone to try the service.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, does anybody would like to make a motion? I'm assuming we're going all through all these items are being done as one.
Correct.
Okay.
Chair,
I
I'll
would make
motion.
go ahead.
Chair, I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, so Jeff has a motion to approve.
And I'll second.
Preston has a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, passes unanimously. Thank you, Katie. Okay, this brings us now to the new business. This is Bruce with a possible motion regarding the various amendments to the UDO.
Good evening, Chair and Board. Hope you're doing well this evening. There are a lot of UDO amendments before you today, so we'll try and go through them at a pretty good pace and not keep you here all day. If there's at any point you have any questions, please feel free just to stop and ask your questions as we go.
Oh, sure.
I'm not sure if the public hearing was actually opened and closed for the last item.
We don't have, but yeah. I don't know if it needs to be, did you say the public hearing was open?
Well, I opened the public hearing, but there was no one here, so we closed the public hearing, yes. Would you like for me to reopen it and close it?
I don't know, Jerry, did you have that in the minutes that you had done that? No. Okay, yeah, then we need to.
Okay, I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. If there's anybody here who would like to speak on any of the public hearing items, you can sign in and do so on your left. If not, we'll close the public hearing. Okay, seeing that there are none, we will close the public hearing and resume with new business.
Can you redo the vote now that you've opened the public
Okay.
hearing?
All right, so we'll go ahead and go, okay, so this is gonna go back then to the transportation plan. Item number 1, we had a motion by Jeff to approve. We had a second by Preston. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those who oppose? Okay, thank you. We'll go ahead and close the public hearing, move on to new business. Thank you.
So today we'll have amendments proposed by 3 different departments within the town. The first set of amendments will be requested by our transportation infrastructure and development staff. They've requested the proposed changes to clarify right-of-way dedication requirements and limit the land taken for development. The reasoning behind this is to provide clear standards for dedication, and it limits land deprivation to 35% of the track and balances town transportation goals with fairness, all as part of it, understanding proportionality and making sure that we're not asking too much of any developer. Here you can see on the site, I won't go through, there's a lot of these, I won't go and read any of these unless anyone has any specific questions. We'll just highlight, leave it on the screen for a little bit for you to review. Of course, this was all included in your packet as well.
Bruce, can you move the microphone?
There? Better. Perfect. Thank you. All right. Again, 7.1 required improvements generally and exceptions. We're updating the exemptions for small scale projects, low chip generators, and high cost improvements. The reasoning behind this is exemptions allow for practical development without compromising future road improvements and ensure safe access for vehicles and emergency services. Here, this was written and edited by our Transportation and Infrastructure Department, so they've gone through, they've added the language they wanted to add, and they've taken out the language that was previously there. As you can see, it was been stricken through here. These are the following exemptions that have been added. Some of these that are not underlined or bolded were in the wording before, have just been put into this number format for you here. Again, some wording has been updated, and then a fee loon section has been provided. This we'll just touch on briefly. This is for projects that are part of the state and local improvement plans or part of our transportation plans as well. When the project is adjacent to a street that's been identified on either of these plans and is scheduled, has been submitted and is scheduled to be under construction within 3 years of the date of the first site plan or first subdivision plan submittal, and remains to be scheduled within those 3 years and it's on schedule, they'll be available to pay a fee in lieu instead of having to do the improvements. Let's read that. In 7.5.4 streets, we're just providing clarification, construction, and order responsibilities. This helps to guide developers on phase construction for grading, dedication, aligning with traffic design standards and connectivity goals. Again, lots of language has been struck. And lastly, for under the transportation amendments, we have under Article 13, developer agreements, language has been added. This is to clarify offsite improvement agreements and cost participation. And the goal is to support coordinated planning with developers and ensures equitable cost sharing required per state code. The second section of our amendments tonight were proposed by our water resources staff. The first one we're providing specifies this was already approved as part of the state requirements. It just got accidentally missed in previous updates to this section as part of the UDO, and so we clarified it specifically. This area here within the Jordan Lake critical area, as defined by North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality, that there's a maximum of 50% built upon area when you're within this area. So that was supposed to be added already. They let us know that it was missing, so that's why we're coming here today, to make sure that we're in compliance with state law. Third amendment, again, requested by the Water Resources Department. Additional language needed to be added to this section. This speaks to riparian buffers and how no clearing, grading, or development shall take place with them. Additionally, we needed to add language that no residential lot shall be located within any riparian buffer zone. Typically, right now, as part of development, riparian buffers are usually incorporated as part of the RCA, which is usually on separate lots and not included within the riparian buffers already on individual lots. This is just codifying it into code as well.
Ray, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
And maybe I'm just didn't look deep enough, but when you talk about the Jordan Lake, the watershed area, does it show on our development map where that critical area is?
It does not show at the moment. I think Water Resources is working with our GIS departments to provide a layer. Technically, right now, these critical zones are all outside of our jurisdiction at the moment. So
that's I mean, I didn't see any within our jurisdiction right now, but going forward, we may see them. But
exactly, with any new development or proposed annexations, we may see it come into our jurisdiction.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. And finally, for the Water Resources, there was just a typographical error that we're correcting here. It's zones, under areas it says zones 1 and 2 or, when we were informed it's supposed to say of, so we're making that correction for them there to increase the understanding. Next section is requested to you by planning staff. So this is under section 8.3.11 for off-street parking, loading, electric vehicle charging spaces. Planning staff is proposing to amend this section to allow multifamily or apartment projects with any dwelling units restricted to households with an annual income that is not greater than 80% of the area median income for respected housing holds, to be able to have a reduction or be exempt from having to provide EV ready spaces or EV charging spaces for those units. As there's a greater push by the town, especially town council, to have more affordable housing be part of projects, we feel that this is more in line with the current intent. What we're running into is, with the way this is worded previously, the entire project would have to come in at that 80% mark of that area median income. And that's very few and far between. Very few projects come in at that thing. So most projects that come in at market value, maybe with a handful, a small percentage of apartments for affordable housing, they would still be required to have not excessive, but additional EV charging spaces and EV ready spaces, which adds to the cost of the development itself. Just for some clarification right now, for apartments and multifamily, the number of EV spaces they have to have is 30% of the parking, and the number of EV chargers they're required to have is 15%. So we're looking at 45% of their parking has to be somehow tied into EV at the moment. So if we can get them to add more affordable housing, we're talking about reducing that requirement a bit. So that's the intent behind that. The next amendment that the planning staff is proposing is to section 4.3.5. This request is to clarify the scope of permitted retail products under retail sales and service, and specifically building supplies. Previously, was stated swimming pools. We believe that more appropriate and concise language would be above ground pools and pool forms would be more appropriate in this type of association with this type of business or use on the site. So we propose that change there. The next amendment for industrial uses, we're proposing that industrial uses shall be allowed to have a showroom as an accessory use, provided that the goods and services offered are directly related to the primary use of the showroom, meets the requirements of our accessory use section already. And number 7, it's a use classification update. This was the principal, so this is for electrical power facilities. We've updated the language previously, so this was the principal use of the land for an electrical generation facility, ridge landside distribution and or switching station. This is typically, the distribution and switching stations are typically handled under our utility minor use in the UDO. That's how we kind of handle it going back as far as we can. Any current projects come in, if they're going to do a substation or a power station on the site, they'll have to do that. A lift station and stuff is set. They'll come in under the utility minor. So this has been updated to state that this is only for power generation, and those other elements will be associated with the utility minor in the section under use classifications. And that's the final one. If there's any questions, we're happy to answer those questions for you.
Thank you, Bruce, for your presentation. Somebody have any questions or comments for Bruce?
I've got a general question for Bruce. Good job on your presentation, by the way. And it's really not related to anything that you're proposing here, but based on your further explanation of the EV charging spaces, because that was one of the questions I had, was how often or do we ever get LIHTC tax credit projects for workforce housing?
Sure. I'll answer. Yeah, thank you, Diane.
This is Diane. So we have two active low-income housing tax credit projects, and we have one that's likely to be proposed in the next 2 months that we've been made aware of. So on average, it's probably every 3 years. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Thank you so much.
Bruce, on the dedication of right-of-way, how did you land on 35% of the tract? I'm just wondering, this might be a challenge for smaller parcels, especially when it comes to smaller infill projects. A third of the land is, more than a third, is pretty substantial.
Yeah, I apologize. We originally hoped that TID would be here to present this and provide some explanations, because they're also the ones that wrote this. The 35% number, do either of you have any idea?
I do know our Director of Transportation Infrastructure Development looked at other departments, and I know Fuquay has that number in their ordinance. I can't recall off the top of my head if there was another jurisdiction that had a similar specific number, but that was what was used in Fuquay, or is used in Fuquay.
Yeah, I like that the language is more precise than not denying a reasonable use.
Right.
It gives you an actual goal line to aim for. But I just feel like 35% seems a little aggressive, especially, again, just infill, smaller tracks.
Yeah, especially considering you'll have resource conservation area on top of that.
Right.
Now there's we're down to.
So we did have our legal staff review it, and this is getting at the Nolan-Dolan Supreme Court decisions. And so I feel comfortable with that number given the amount of review that it went through. But to be able to tell you exactly, other than other jurisdictions have used it and it has worked in those places, I don't have an additional answer.
Thank you.
The way I'm reading that, it says it's not any greater than 35%. So it's not necessarily that it has to be 35%, or am I misreading that?
No, you want to.
Up to,
Okay. I thought I had trying to find the get back to the amendment of the UV.
It's on the screen for you if you like.
Okay, yeah, just got it here. Okay. Do we know how many people who currently are any of these restricted income areas are using EVs?
I do not have any metrics or data on that now. It depends on how the market goes, what incentives there are out there. There was that credit for a while, so
Yeah.
there's a lot of people out there that are using EVs as well.
I was
couldn't
just
tell
kind
you.
of curious. I was just more just we're trying to think, make things more affordable. I get that, and I can appreciate that, and then at the same time, you just kind of wonder if should there really be much of a requirement at all?
Someone recently told me how
Amen.
much they were leasing an electric vehicle from VinFast, and it was very affordable. So
Was it? Okay.
yeah, specifically.
I'm just wondering about the affordability of electric, anyways, like how does that fit
Impressive
the
incentive.
profile of the people who would be using, living in these areas? I don't know. So,
Well, just to clarify, the intent of this amendment is to ensure that any specific units, like the rezonings that are coming through where the developer's offering 10% of the units will be affordable at this level, those units don't have to be included in the calculation for the EV charging or any of the EV requirements. So anyone else living in the complex, theoretically, them could be at market rate or well above,
Sure.
that,
do we ever have any projects that are going to be, 100% where it's
all affordable at this level?
all affordable?
That's what
and then-
Preston was asking about earlier, the LIHTC, the low income housing tax credit projects. In that case, it would be completely exempt from the EV parking requirements.
Got it.
As long as it was at the 80% AMI, the units restricted to 80% AMI or lower.
Got it. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And generally, you get a fewer number of units in those. It ranges, but I think your question is a good one regarding utilization, and the cost has come down significantly. So I mean, I think that and that probably will just be something that the planning department will have to address. I mean, the way I'm kind of processing this is kind of incremental, and that if that price, if the market allows for a much broader group of individuals to jump into the EV realm, then yeah, I mean, why exempt that infrastructure entirely from a LIHTC product? You know, because if you have the ability for, and you know, something else to keep in mind, for example, I don't know off the top of my head, but I know that, for example, in the Raleigh MSA, the area median income for a family of four is like 140,000, 135,000. So 80% AMI is not too far down there. And so when we've got people entering into the EV market, you know, we want to be able to have the infrastructure there for them. But I see your point that the infrastructure is so expensive. But that's certainly something to consider, is that you've got people entering into the market. The costs have come down. We don't want to create problems for the developers who where the cost of infrastructure is so much that they're not providing for that amenity, for that asset. But at the same time, we need to keep that in mind, because the cost is coming down, and 80% AMI is not as low as you might think in the Raleigh MSA. That's a good chunk of money.
Yeah. Very good. Okay, any other questions, comments? Okay, not all at once. Do I have a motion?
Move approval of the text amendments as proposed.
Okay, so we have a motion by Preston.
Second.
We have a second by Keith. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. Okay, thank you, Bruce.
Thank you.
Okay, we have one more item, which is the adjournment. Motion to adjourn by Jeff,
Sarah will second.
second by Sarah. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Good night.
Thank you.